To you.
Good morning.
Also, Christine, thanks for staying on. Now, Christine, when did you find out? How did you find out that James was taking drugs?
Different people had told me James had been taking drugs.
Did you believe them?
Not the first. And then we asked James, and he denied it, which all teenagers at the time do deny it. It's very, very hard work to get the truth out of anybody.
What was his behaviour like? How was he changing? How had he changed?
His behavioural problems, things going missing, just little things. But eventually we did get it out of him. It took me a long, long time.
Okay.
After a lot of stress and trouble, it took us a long, long time to get it out of James.
Eric, does this sound like a classic example of the way it happens, that the youngsters deny it for ages and eventually mums and dads find out ages and ages later, as Christine was saying?
If it's very heavy drug use with a very addictive drug, such as heroin, for example, I think that what's very worrying is that often newspapers whip up a lot of hysteria about your children are going to be addicted to drugs, what signs to look for. And really, there are so many different drugs, all of them having very different effects. And also, there's a major question which has to be looked at. And the big question is, as we heard, something like 50% of people under 25 have tried drugs, mostly soft drugs. You need to know what kind of drug it is, and more to the point, just because they've tried it is very different from being an addict. So, for example, if you discover your teenagers had 1 can of beer, it's very different from them drinking a bottle of whiskey a day.
Okay.
If they drink just 1 beer, or they have occasionally experimented with soft drugs, you probably won't know it. If they are addicted to one of the heavy drugs, you will know it, particularly the lie, the dishonesty, the money missing, other things like mood swings, and parents tend to know when there's a big change. Those are the general things, as with gambling addiction or anything else.
All right.
The signs are there.
Eric, thanks very much, and also Christine, more from you later as well. Thank you both. Now, most children actually know more about drugs than their parents. So we've got a back to basics guide for parents on the 5 drugs most commonly used by young people.
The subject of drugs strikes fear and terror into the hearts of parents, and instinctively they think of things like cocaine, heroin and seedy environments, a world away from a residential street like this one. But there are other drugs that parents need to be aware of, because their children may well be in contact with them in their everyday lives. 5 of the most common drugs are ecstasy, amphetamines, LSD, cannabis and solvents. Cannabis is the commonest drug taken by teenagers in the UK. It's also known as marijuana, pot, draw, blow, hash, weed or ganja. There are 2 main forms. It either occurs as a solid dark lump, which is a resin, or as the plant, and that is known as grass. It's either smoked as a joint or it's eaten, and it's commonly put in things like cakes. It makes people relaxed, but it also causes incoordination and loss of short-term memory. When it's smoked, it's often used in conjunction with tobacco, and that means that you've got an increased risk of lung cancer and respiratory disease. Lighter fuels, aerosols, glues, thinners and correcting fluids are all known as solvents. Now, these are most commonly used by children between the ages of 12 and 16, although younger children are also experimenting with them now. They're inhaled. The children feel a sense of a high, a euphoria. It's a bit like being drunk, but there are also very serious side effects to using solvents. It makes the breathing rate drop. It can cause children to become unconscious, and it can cause heart failure, which can be fatal. Because solvents are often sniffed from a plastic bag, there is also a huge risk of suffocation. And often, children will sniff solvents in areas where adults aren't. And these tend to be very dangerous places, so there are often a lot of accidents, with children falling onto railway lines or into canals. These are amphetamines, or speed, whiz, sulfate uppers, or purple hearts. It's normally a white or a grey powder, which you can smoke, snort, inject, or swallow. It's a stimulant drug, so it gives you lots of energy, but it also depresses the appetite. But having taken it, it can cause depression, hallucinations, paranoia, and problems with sleep, concentration, and mood. LSD is also known as acid trips, tabs, blotters, and dots. It's normally impregnated onto small pieces of blotting paper with cartoon characters. It's a hallucinogenic drug. You hear and see very bizarre things. It's like having a dream whilst you're awake. The problem is you don't know if it's going to be a good dream or a bad dream. And a bad dream is called a bad trip, and they can be extremely frightening. It also causes paranoia, and having taken LSD, you can then suffer a series of flashbacks. Any of these could contain ecstasy or MDMA. It comes in many forms. It may be tablets, capsules, and it could be any colour, shape or size. And they're often named according to how they look. So a black and red one is a Dennis the Menace, a yellow and green one is a rhubarb and custard. When you take ecstasy, you have a sense of a rush followed by calmness. You feel very close to people and all your senses are heightened, but it also gives you tremendous energy, and that's why it's used as a dance drug. It increases your heart rate, it increases your blood pressure, and it can cause sudden death by causing heart rhythm problems. It also upsets the body's temperature control, so the body overheats, and it leads to liver, kidney and brain damage. But at the end of the day, no one really knows the long-term effects. In the fight against substance misuse, the greatest weapon a parent can have is knowledge. So, know what they're called, know what they look like, and know the risks.
Well, an extremely, really useful moment there from Dr. David Balsam. Fascinating stuff. Hope that's helped. Now, as we said this morning, joining us are Christine and James Berry. James actually called the show when we were asking people last week were they having problems with drugs, and you wanted to come on, James, didn't you?
Yeah,
this morning,
right, yeah.
and you had to persuade Christine to come with you.
Yeah.
Why did you want to come and talk to us?
Well, when I saw the show, I just thought, well, you know, it is going to be useful that for kids to get a lot more information.
Now you're 22 now, but you started
23
now, but you started taking drugs when you were how old?
When I was about 15, 16 years old.
And how did you get involved? Do you remember the first time somebody offered you drugs? Or?
Yeah, I do. It was with another lad who was the same age as me, and we pinched it off his sister. And then from then on, I just, you know, I enjoyed it, so I carried on.
So you started with what?
With cannabis.
Right.
I started smoking cannabis.
And progressed through other
yeah,
things?
through LSD, amphetamines, ecstasy and things.
Okay. And ended up taking what?
Ended up taking heroin.
Heroin.
Quite a few years down the line, but I still ended up taking heroin.
Okay, now I know that you're trying to get off heroin at the moment, aren't you? And you're working very hard at that. At what point, James, did you think, I have a real problem here? It's not fun. This is not fun.
Well, it's when you take it to feel normal. Then you're not getting the same the buzz or the high off it, you know. And when my girlfriend found that, and I was, you know, the money stopped coming in then, so I knew I had a problem then.
So you were borrowing money from your girlfriend?
Yeah, I was borrowing quite a lot of money off her.
Okay. And how are you now, James? How's it going, actually trying to come
It's
off?
going fine, it's going really fine.
Okay. Christine, you know, you found out about this. Did you feel that there was any help available for you?
Not a lot at the time.
Not much,
There's
really.
still not a lot of information about. If you get the holiday period and you're stuck, there is no information whatsoever. There's no help, there's nowhere to go when it's a holiday.
It's because there's
You've
so
just
many
stuck to
people who
yourself.
abuse that.
Yeah.
They abuse the doctor's trust then. So many people do that, so when genuine people do go for help, you know, they're turned away.
So at what point did you tell your mum?
It was when I think I was really struggling then, really struggling, so I just told them it was better off out in the open. It's about time they knew.
And what was the reaction?
You went a bit freaky, didn't you, at first? She lost it.
wasn't.
She, you know,
It made me ill.
I could see the hurt in her face, and as you can see, she's not a big lady, and it made her ill. It really did.
So at that point, Christine, how did you feel that you could help James?
By taking him back under my wing and making sure he didn't go anywhere at all, have any money. So that if he didn't have any money, he couldn't buy anything.
Right.
So if he didn't, I kept him with me. Wherever I went, he went with me.
So I was like with my mum nearly
It's
24 hours a day.
It's like
you
being
know.
a prisoner 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I've
But
got him with me constantly 24 hours a day.
But it's working.
But it's working.
Yeah, it
Let's
is.
go back to where you started here. You were 15 years old. Now they're talking now about education for perhaps for primary school children. What would have helped you, do you think, in hindsight now, looking back, what might have helped you actually stop taking drugs right from the start?
Really, what would have helped is what they're talking about now. Is like maybe getting people going into schools, and you know, telling the kids as young as like 10, 11-year-old, you know, drilling it into them, showing them pictures of of addicts who have got, you know, their arms covered in needle marks or even, you know, shock treatment, things like that.
And someone like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Telling them that it isn't fun anymore.
'Cause
Okay, James, for the moment, thank you very much indeed, and Christine, but James is actually staying on with us this morning. As we said, we want your calls if you've got any queries, any problems. James might be just the person to help answer them. Also, Eric Sigerman, Dr. Eric Sigerman is staying with us, also our Dr. David Bull. So any questions you need to know, have an answer to, please give us a call, 0500 500 334.
Do keep those calls coming in. Now, schools have a big part to play in drugs education for children, and they approach it in various ways. Now, some schools actually are involved with theatre groups and travelling roadshows, and that's their way of getting the information across to children about drugs and drug use. And our man, David Bull, is behind one of these roadshows, and he joins us once again this morning, hopefully. David, good morning to you once again.
Hello, good morning, Tony. Welcome back. This is St Peter's Collegiate School here in Wolverhampton. Now, many schools have got very, very good proactive anti-drugs campaigning and teaching going on, and this school is no exception. And what they do here is the Year 10s actually perform a play to their peer group to try to educate them about the dangers of drugs. Have a look at this. It's fantastic.
Christ, who did this to you? Not your dad again. Look, he's never come across me after I beat his face to a pulp. Tell you what, let's go down the chippy. I'll treat you. And before I forget, here's another little treat. Try one of these. That'll cheer you up a bit.
I'm not sure about these. Well, they look like sweets to me, but Craig has some weird stuff. Better not.
Come on, I've never given you out that'll harm you. Here, I'll have one too. Come on, we'll have a laugh.
He's right. He's always stood by you before. He's the only one who cares. You have a go. Can't harm you if he's had one too. Go on.
That's it.
Well, it's all very well, isn't it? It's all very well doing a play like that, but does it work? Well, with me, I've got 100 pupils from St Peter's. Good morning. They've woken up, which is good. And because I'm such a horrible person, what I'm going to do is do a quiz with them, ask them 4 questions, and they will be either true or false. Now, I've given you all 2 pieces of card. One is red and one is green, OK? If you think it is true, put up the green card. Very good. They're very good, aren't they? And if you think it's false, you hand up the red card. So far, so good. And I also want to introduce Rachel, who's going to be over here. She's our adjudicator because I'm too much of a chicken and I want them all to like me, really. OK, so are we ready to go? Yes? Marvellous. OK, right, are you ready then? Here comes your very first question. All right, the first question is, tobacco kills more people than any other drug in the UK. Is that true or false? Don't cheat. The answer to that is true. Rachel, are you keeping a score here? Marvellous. OK, next question. You can be prosecuted for letting someone use cannabis in your own home, even if you're not using it yourself. Is that true or false? Difficult one. It's true. Gosh, I'm very impressed. OK, next one. Amphetamines make you sleepy. True or false? Oh, not so sure about this one, aren't we? OK, happy, Rachel? And finally, if you have a drugs conviction, you are likely to be banned from visiting the USA. And that means no more Disney World, none of that. Is that true or false? OK, brilliant. Of course, that's true. Rachel, who won?
I hate to say this, but it's a draw.
Oh! Give yourselves a cheer. There you go. Go on, well done. Well, in fact, they all did really, really well. And the thing is that children often know a bit, but they don't know a whole lot about drugs. And if you think they don't know enough, the people who really don't seem to know are the parents. And that, of course, is extremely worrying. Now, with me, I've got the actors from the play. You'll recognise them from earlier on. What do you think about your parents? Do they know about drugs?
I don't think they know much as us do, because we have education at school, and because of campaigns and stuff, I think we know more than they do. They're a bit out of touch.
Yeah, I think parents are quite ignorant towards like drugs because in their generation it wasn't a problem.
Well, my mum, I find, does have awareness in the drug area because of experience that she's had. But I think it's just a general lack of awareness for drugs.
Sure, I'm sure that's right. And the thing is, what do you think? Would you ask your parents for advice about drugs?
No, not exactly. I think I'd rather ask my sisters, really, because they're closer to my age. I think it's easier to relate to them.
Right, well, I think that's very interesting because I think that really is mirrored across the country. Parents just don't know very much about it. And what's happened now is that there are lots of schemes around the country to try and educate children and parents and families all about drugs. And I'm involved in 2 of those. Well, the first one is this one, Too Smart for Drugs, which is in Essex. And I go into schools in Essex and give drugs information. But I'm also involved in something that affects the whole family. And that is called the Breeze Drugs Awareness Show. Have a look at this. Now, as you can see, this is in a shopping centre, so we don't have a captive audience. We've got to get that audience. And we use bands, we use games, we use fun, and, of course, lots of strange people. One of those strange people is me, as you can see there. Not the same shirt, by the way, before anyone says anything. Rachel Lindsay from Brookside and the band called Breeze. And what we do is we give lots and lots of information, and we're there to answer questions as well. So we may be coming to a shopping centre very near you, and these are the dates that I'm going to be around the country. And in fact, in August, I'm going to be in Derby and Birmingham. I'm also going to be in Nottingham, Manchester, Warrington and Liverpool in September. So I'm going to be extremely busy. But that's about it from us here in Wolverhampton. Have you had a good time? Have you learnt anything? Yes! Well, that's good news, isn't it? Of course, we've had a lot of fun, but it's a very serious subject. And so what can you do as a young person if you're worried that your friend may be on drugs? I mean, what on earth do you do? Well, here is some very useful advice on things that you can do to help.
My name is Vanessa Jones, I'm 16 and I work as a volunteer for a drug information service. We offer drug advice to young people from young people. If you have a friend or a relative who does have a drug problem, then my advice is to listen to them at all times, to stand by them and not let them down. Don't criticise them to their face or to other people. Suggest what they can do, but don't keep going on about it. They have to make their own decisions. If they'd like to, maybe offer to go along with them for moral support to a doctor, advice centre or counsellor. Encourage them to be positive about themselves. It is very hard helping somebody who has got a drug problem, but after all, you are their friend and you can make a real difference.
Now, in a moment, we'll be announcing the results of our phone survey. Calls still coming in on that. Also this morning, our Dr. David Ball and also Dr. Eric Sigman and James, who was talking earlier about his heroin addiction, they're all staying on this morning to answer your questions about drugs. If you've got anything you want to ask, please give us a ring. Now, this evening, BBC One is screening The Drug Debate. Now, let's find out more about the programme from presenter Kirsty Walk, who joins us now live from London. Good morning, Kirsty.
Good morning, hi.
Setting up already for the show, I can see.
We're getting ready here, yes.
What exactly are you going to be talking about tonight, Kirsty?
Well, it's very much going to be expanding on a lot of what you've been doing in your programme. What Keith Helliwell seems to be saying is now we must wake up to the reality of drugs in Britain. And he's been spending the last 4 months going around the country speaking to over 2,000 groups. So tonight in the studio, he'll be hearing from users, from the families of users, from drug workers, from police officers, and from those involved in drugs and crime. And he'll be setting out his stall for his 10-year strategy, telling us what he wants to do with education, treatment and prevention.
Kirsty, can viewers get involved in the programme? I know it's a studio debate.
Of course they can. I'll be hoping for as many people at home to be taking part by sending in their emails to us and also by telephoning us. And they can do that by telephoning us at the Drug Debate, which the telephone number is 0181 752 7750. And if you're lucky enough to get access to email, you email us at drugs@bbc.co.uk. And throughout the programme, we'll be putting the views of people who've either emailed us or telephoned us into the studio, and then I'll be putting things directly to Keith Helliwell.
Great. Well, it sounds like a great show, Kirsty. We look forward to that tonight. Thank you very much for taking time out this morning to talk to us.
Thank you.
So that drug special is on BBC One tonight. That's the Drug Debate at 10 o'clock this evening. Now, I know we've had all sorts of calls coming in. Now, hopefully Dr. David Bull is still out there on our outside broadcast. And also, as we said, Dr. Eric Sigman and James have stayed with us. And the phones have certainly lit up this morning, haven't they?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Should we start with Eric, as we're in the studio now?
Yeah, we have a call from Sandra from Dover. Eric says her 2 teenage daughters have been taking ecstasy. She wonders why they might have started taking drugs, so she says she's been a good mother and a good parent. She wonders why that would be.
Yeah, people always assume that there is a reason, and parents have got to accept, and we as a society have to accept, part of being young is taking risks. And if one of the risks available happens to be recreational drug use, they'll come into contact with it, and it may be as simple and as superficial as that. And parents must not assume that there's anything wrong at home. Now, if someone is using it as a way of boosting their self-confidence, or because they can't stand reality and are very miserable and unhappy, that's a very, very different reason, and it's very worrying. So don't assume that there's a problem, even though the drug itself may be a risk. It may just be recreational, and they may be misguided.
Can I just bring James in there? Because your mum, Christine, was saying this morning, the first thing you do is blame yourself. Do you lay any blame with
No, not at all. It's not right. You shouldn't blame yourselves. You know, it's the children that are doing it. It's not the parents' fault. They can't. The kids go out to clubs, to nightclubs, and the parents can't stop them doing that, and they can't be with them 24 hours a day.
So it's no blame there. Okay, David, can you hear us out there in Wolverhampton? Hi, Evan from Anglesey. Good morning, Evan. Thank you for your call. They want to know which drugs are addictive.
Right, it's quite a difficult question to answer, really, because what you've got to look at is whether it's sort of a dependence is physical, whether you actually need that drug for your body, or whether it's a psychological dependence. So I think the answer probably to the question is all of them can be addictive in one way or another. And of course, there are so many drugs around now. I think, you know, you really cannot underestimate the power of these drugs. And I think, you know, there's this whole debate about whether children start on softer drugs and move to harder drugs. We have to educate them now to say that, yes, people take drugs because they can be fun, but the reasons that we're worried is because they can be extremely dangerous as well.
But James, you said you started taking them for fun. But how did it end up?
I need the drugs now, or I did need the drugs just to feel normal, just to feel like anybody else.
So it ends up not being very much fun?
No, it's not fun at all.
Okay, and also another call as well, just very briefly, Eric, I think everybody sort of answers this one. Barbara from Worcester says her 14-year-old son has started going out a lot. She doesn't know who with. He's also becoming very moody and isn't taking any time with his appearance. How can she talk to him? Could it just be normal teenage behaviour, which in some ways I suppose it could be, couldn't it, Eric, really?
It could be. It's difficult to say. One of the problems with accusing him of being a drug addict just like that is you can actually ruin your relationship with him. Quite frankly, it may be that he has to fall on his face or actually get caught doing something before you'll know. So there is not a foolproof way of knowing, but just obviously be attentive and see if you spot anything.
Okay. All right, thanks very much.
Eric, thank you. And David out there on the OB, and to everyone there in Wolverhampton, looking very well behaved behind you there, David. Thank you to you all for taking part. Just one final word from you, James. It was very, very brave of you to come in this morning and talk to us. What's your advice to people out there, parents and youngsters?
To parents, don't think before you jump in on, you know, asking your children if they get as much information as you can on what drugs they're taking. And don't assume that it's always, you know, the hard drugs. It could be soft drugs.
And what about the youngsters out there who are thinking of maybe trying drugs?
Stay away. I'd stay away from it because it's ruined my life. It's ruined my life.
Well, James, you're getting yourself together now, but thanks very much. It's been great to talk to you this morning. Now, earlier we asked you to phone in, answer our question, how much should we tell our kids about drugs? Well, 93% of you said tell them all the facts. Only 7% thought just say no approach is the best. I can see David Ball clapping over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're one of the 93% who think we should tell our children all the facts, then this number may be of interest. 0800 77 6600. It's a free phone number for the National Drugs Helpline. That's it from us today, isn't it?
Certainly, it's been a great show. See you tomorrow, same time.
Bye-bye.
James.